Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, sometimes history throws these curveballs.
hmm
An event that seems, pretty small at the time
hmm
ends up having like massive unintended consequences.
Mm.
And that's exactly what we're going to be diving into today.
Yeah.
Operation Ajax.
Yeah.
You sent this incredible audio documentary over about it, and I have to say, it's a
Yes.
real eye-opener.
It's a fascinating story. Really is.
It is. So for our listeners, let's set the stage. 1953 Iran.
Okay.
We have Mohammad Mossadegh,
Right.
the democratically elected prime minister,
Yep.
who decides to nationalize the Iranian oil industry.
Bold move.
I mean, obviously, this ruffled some feathers in the West, especially in Britain and the
Right.
U.S.,
You-
who had, shall we say, a vested interest in that oil.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
This is the Cold War.
yeah,
In full swing.
exactly.
And there was this deep fear
Right.
of communist influence spreading.
Yeah.
Mossadegh's move was seen as like a direct threat to Western interests
Cool.
and, potentially pushing Iran
Right.
into the Soviet sphere.
Exactly. And enter our main character,
Here we go.
Kermit Roosevelt Jr.,
Wow.
grandson of President Theodore Roosevelt.
What a name.
Talk about a family legacy to live up to. The documentary portrays him as this ambitious CIA operative, just eager to prove himself,
Oh, yeah.
make a mark
He wanted to make a splash, didn't he?
on the world stage.
Absolutely, and he did. What a mark he made.
Oh, yeah.
He was tasked with orchestrating a coup
Right.
to overthrow Mossadegh and reinstate the Shah,
Yep.
all under the utmost secrecy, a
Yeah.
high-stakes gamble
Yeah.
with far-reaching consequences.
Let's talk about how he actually pulled this off.
Yeah.
The documentary highlights this three-phased approach,
Okay.
starting with propaganda.
Right.
I mean, Kermit basically flooded Iran with anti-Mossadegh rhetoric,
Wow.
using the media to paint him as a communist puppet and just sow discontent
Oh,
among
yeah.
the population.
Classic strategy.
It is
And what's interesting is how readily the Iranian press seemed to fall in line.
right.
Kermit bribed journalists, editors, even newspaper owners.
Wow.
I mean, it makes you wonder about the state of the media landscape in Iran at that time
Yeah.
and how susceptible it was
Yeah.
to manipulation.
That's a great point. It wasn't just the press either. He went on to bribe influential religious leaders and even street gangs
But,
to further destabilize the situation.
oh my gosh.
The documentary mentions this almost comical scene where he meets a mullah in a department store.
Uh-huh.
Doesn't even speak to him.
Wow.
Just slips him an envelope of cash.
Oh my goodness.
It sounds like something out of a spy movie.
Well, it was a spy movie in a sense. It really was. It highlights that clandestine nature of covert operations.
Right.
I mean, Kermit had to operate in the shadows,
Totally.
manipulating events from behind the scenes, using whatever means necessary
Yeah.
to achieve his objective.
It does make you think, though, if he could so easily influence these figures, what did that say about Iranian society back then?
Yeah.
Was there already this like underlying unrest and dissatisfaction that he was able to exploit?
It certainly seems that way. I mean, he identified key figures and leveraged existing social and political divisions to amplify the chaos
Yeah.
and undermine Mossadegh's authority. He really understood the levers of power in
Okay.
Iranian society.
All this leads us to the Shah himself, who's portrayed as young, indecisive, almost a pawn
Yeah.
in this bigger game.
Yeah.
How did Kermit manage to convince him
Right.
to dismiss Mossadegh?
Yeah.
What did that reveal about the Shah's character?
That's a crucial question. Remember, the Shah was in a precarious position.
Yeah.
He faced pressure from the West, but also had to contend with a popular prime minister.
Right.
Kermit exploited this vulnerability, appealing to the Shah's fear of losing power and painting Mossadegh as a threat to his throne.
It's interesting. I was surprised to learn that the Shah's twin sister, Princess Ashraf, played a significant role in this as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. She was vehemently opposed to Mossadegh and urged her brother to take action.
I see.
Yeah.
So the documentary paints her as a strong-willed, pro-Western figure within the Iranian elite.
Yeah.
Her influence on the Shah adds another layer of complexity
It does.
to this story.
So Kermit gets the Shah's signature. The decree is issued, but the first attempt to arrest Mossadegh
Right.
fails spectacularly.
Hmm.
How did Mossadegh get wind of the plan?
That's where the world of intelligence and counterintelligence comes in. The documentary suggests there might have been a leak, maybe within the Iranian military, or perhaps Mossadegh had a more effective intelligence network than Kermit anticipated. It's still a bit of a mystery. It's kind of crazy. This is where Kermit's determination really comes through. I mean,
Good.
faced with this setback, he didn't just, back down.
Yeah.
Instead, he doubled down on his efforts, spreading forged documents claiming that Mossadegh was actually planning a coup against the Shah.
It's almost unbelievable, the
Oh,
audacity.
wow.
Flipping the script entirely and accusing your opponent of the very thing that you're trying to do.
It's incredible. It speaks to his understanding of propaganda and the power of controlling the narrative.
Right.
I mean, by creating this counter-narrative,
Right.
he sowed confusion and doubt, further eroding public trust in Mossadegh.
And then things get even wilder. He starts inciting riots, hiring bodybuilders to stage pro-Shah demonstrations, creating this illusion
Oh, wow.
of widespread support for the Shah. It sounds almost comical, these weightlifters in loincloths chanting pro-Shah slogans.
It does sound a bit absurd, doesn't it?
It does.
But it was a calculated move.
Right.
Playing on that visual spectacle,
Right.
the emotional appeal to sway public opinion.
And ultimately it worked. The
Yeah.
coup succeeded. Mossadegh was overthrown, the Shah returned, and the CIA had its victory. But at what cost?
Yeah.
That's what I kept thinking as I listened to this documentary.
That's the crucial question, isn't it? What were the long-term consequences of this short-term victory? I mean, the immediate aftermath was certainly grim. Mossadegh, a democratically elected leader, was placed under house arrest,
Right.
and his supporters faced persecution, imprisonment, and even execution.
It's a stark reminder that regime change, even if it's framed as a liberation, often comes at a steep price.
Yeah.
The documentary really highlighted the human cost of this operation.
Absolutely. And beyond the immediate impact, the coup ushered in an era of authoritarian rule under the Shah backed by the U.S.
Right.
And this created this deep resentment among many Iranians who felt their democratic aspirations had been crushed.
It's ironic, isn't it? The U.S. intervened to prevent a supposed communist takeover, but ended up supporting a regime that became increasingly repressive and out of touch with its people.
It's a classic example of the unintended consequences of foreign intervention.
Yeah.
Actions taken with the best of intentions, or at least with a certain strategic goal in mind, can often lead to outcomes that are diametrically opposed to what was originally intended.
And those consequences really came to a head in 1979 with the Islamic Revolution and the hostage crisis.
Yeah.
I was a young adult then, and I remember the sense of shock and anger that gripped the nation.
The hostage crisis was a watershed moment, bringing to the surface the simmering anti-American sentiment that had been building for decades.
Right.
It was a direct result of the resentment sown by the 1953 coup.
I have to admit, before diving into this deep dive, I hadn't fully grasped the connection between Operation Ajax and the events of 1979. But the documentary makes a very compelling case that the coup was a major contributing factor.
The ripple effects of covert operations can be far-reaching and unpredictable. In this case, the seeds of anti-Americanism planted in 1953 blossomed into a full-blown crisis 26 years later.
It makes you wonder about all the other covert operations that have taken place throughout history and the unintended consequences they may have had on the world stage. It's a sobering thought. I mean, it really makes you question this whole notion of covert operations. Doesn't it? I mean, is there ever a situation where they're truly justified? Or are they always just like a recipe for blowback and unintended consequences?
That's a really complex question, and
Yeah.
there are no easy answers.
Right.
It's this constant debate in foreign policy circles.
Right.
Do you prioritize short-term gains,
Yeah.
even if they risk long-term instability?
Right.
Or do you take a more cautious approach, understanding that intervening in another country's affairs can have unforeseen and often detrimental effects?
Thinking back to Kermit Roosevelt, I mean, he achieved his mission.
Right?
He ousted Mossadegh, put the Shah back in power. But was it a victory, or did he unwittingly set the stage for a much larger conflict?
That's the thing.
It's almost Shakespearean, this ambition leading to unintended tragedy.
Yeah, it really is. That's the legacy of Operation Ajax, isn't it?
Yeah.
A cautionary tale about the hubris of intervening in another nation's destiny,
Right.
even with, seemingly good intentions. The short-term win can often sow the seeds of much larger problems down the line.
It also makes you think about the role of the CIA, not just in this specific operation,
Yeah.
but in shaping U.S. foreign policy throughout the Cold War and beyond. I mean, the documentary suggests that they saw Operation Ajax as like a model for future covert actions.
That's right. The success of the operation, at least in the short term, really emboldened the CIA
Yeah.
and led to this pattern of interventions
Right.
in various countries around the world, often with mixed results.
So what does this all mean for us today?
Yeah.
How can we apply the lessons of Operation Ajax
Yeah.
to our understanding of current events?
Yeah.
Especially in a world where geopolitical tensions are, let's face it, as high as ever.
I think the most important takeaway is the need for critical thinking and a healthy dose of skepticism when it comes to foreign policy decisions.
Yeah.
We need to be wary of these simple narratives of good guys and bad guys.
It's like you said earlier, understanding the context,
Yes.
the history,
Absolutely.
is crucial to making informed judgments about the present.
Exactly.
We can't just look at a situation in isolation. We have to consider the long chain of events that led to where we are now.
100%.
And we also need to be aware of the potential for unintended consequences.
Yes.
Actions taken today, even seemingly small ones,
Right.
can have ripple effects that we may not fully comprehend for years or even decades to come.
It's true.
Well, this deep dive has certainly given me a lot to think about. It's a reminder that history isn't just something that happened in the past.
Yeah.
It's alive and well shaping the world we live in today.
Absolutely.
And it's an invitation to engage with history, to learn from it, and to use that knowledge to navigate the complexities of the present.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
A big thank you to you for helping us unpack all of this.
Yeah.
And for our listeners, I hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and given you some new perspectives on a pivotal moment in history.
It's been my pleasure.
And remember, if you enjoyed this exploration of Operation Ajax, be sure to subscribe to the deep dive for more thought-provoking deep dives into the forces that shape our world. We'll see you next time.